Hamas is now alleging that 7 hostages have been killed in the Gaza camp bombing. Hamas blames Israel for killing those hostages. Hamas claims that the several people that they had taken hostages were kept in this particular Jabalia refugee camp, 7 of whom have died at the hands of Israel is the claim that Hamas is now making. Siddhant, my colleague, joining us, getting us more details. Now, Siddhant, we did know that this airstrike killed several dozen people at the biggest refugee camp on the Gaza Strip. Now, Hamas claims that several of those hostages have also been killed.
Well, that's right. Look, there is nobody to independently go and perhaps verify the claims that Hamas is making right now, perhaps the claims that they have made before, including the strike on the hospital. Now they have come up with this new, perhaps, story saying that the civilians have been killed in the Israeli airstrike. Now, that is something which requires an independent probe, and perhaps it would also be interesting to see that how Israel is going to react to it. Definitely, there have been attempts that have been made by Hamas in last maybe 10 to 15 days, giving some sort of a hint that they're ready for hostage swap or perhaps something which can stop the war. Not officially they have come up, but their senior leadership have been making statements in favor of the hostage swap, and also given the pressure coming from Qatar. After the diplomacy that America has put in place in West Asia. So it would be interesting to see how Israel is going to react to it, and also that whether Hamas will be able to prove this, that these 7 hostages have been killed in the Israeli airstrike, or there is some other story to it. Back to you.
Right, Siddhant, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that. We'll do keep an eye out on how Israel reacts to this, that it is at the hands of their airstrike that several hostages have been killed at the refugee camp. Whether these hostages were of Israeli nationality or foreign nationals, that is yet to be ascertained as well. But let's listen in to some more reactions that are now pouring in.
I would exercise a lot of caution relying on reports coming out of Gaza. I remember how the event in the Al Ahli hospital in Gaza City started with reports of 500 dead and then 800 dead, and I know how it ended. We were blamed for killing many Palestinian civilians then, but it later became apparent what had happened, and it also became apparent that the number of civilian casualties was greatly inflated by all of the so-called authorities in Gaza, which is basically saying Hamas. Now, I'm not saying that there are no civilian casualties. What I am saying is that we struck an important military objective. This Ibrahim Briari, who was a battalion commander who was leading operations and fighting against Israel as he was targeted, he and many dozens of enemy combatants were in a tunnel complex underneath the ground. We struck that tunnel complex and that caused it to collapse. And it is our assessment that dozens of Hamas operatives were killed. Those are casualties that should be factored in any report of casualties coming out of the Gaza Strip. And I also understand that there is significant structural damage around, and that is because Hamas built that vast tunnel complex underneath the buildings, and it probably collapsed as a result of the strike. We have to put into context that this is the same area, northern Gaza, that we have been asking Palestinian civilians, non-combatants, to evacuate for almost 2 weeks. Most Palestinians have. But I really ask and would want to understand, why have Palestinian civilians either been forced or chosen to remain in that area in direct risk of their own lives? They should move to the south. They should not be in a war zone, in a main combat area. And it's not too late to call on all Palestinian civilians in northern Gaza, please evacuate to a safer area in the south, because northern Gaza is an active combat zone and Hamas uses civilians as their human shields. Today's event is a clear example of it.
Now, 7th of October was when the terror strike happened on that music festival in Israel. Since then, we've only seen escalated fights from both sides, both from Hamas's side and from the Israeli Defense Forces as well. This is the devastation that now remains as far as the Jabalia refugee camp is concerned. Remember, this is the biggest refugee camp on the Gaza Strip. Israel believed that there are Hamas commanders, Hamas terrorists that are holed up there, which is why they bombed it late last night. This is what now remains there. Missiles continue to rain down in Gaza. The skyline has been lit with those explosions all through the night. These are visuals that we have been seeing throughout the last 3 weeks as Israel continues the offensive against Hamas to break Hamas's back. Unfortunately, those hostages still remain. Several of them have been now killed in that Jabalia refugee camp attack, is what Hamas has come out and said. There are other parts of Israel that are also under attack. This is coming in from Ashdod, where we saw fire coming out. There was a rocket strike that was carried out by Hamas in different cities of Israel. This one coming in from Ashdod, where you see several vehicles that are set ablaze there. These are videos perhaps being taken by residents who are still residing in that particular area. Some of these areas are not as worst affected as those that are near the border, near the Gaza Strip. Now, these airstrikes continue from both sides. The onslaught continues. Yesterday, an Israeli airstrike targeted Gaza's largest refugee camp, like I just pointed out. It coincided with the highest daily delivery of medicine and food since the beginning of this conflict.